Hey everyone. Today we're dialing the clock back to 2015 to dig into a study that uncovered a pretty shocking truth about one of Europe's biggest economies. It's all about a stubborn gap at the very top of corporate Germany, and it raises some big questions that, honestly, are still super relevant today.
So, success has no gender. It sounds great, doesn't it? It's the ideal we all want to believe in, that if you're talented and you work hard, you can make it to the top. But as our source material from 2015 showed, well, the reality in German boardrooms back then painted a very, very different picture. Okay, look at this. 0%. Just zero. It's a number that hits you right away, and you can't help but wonder, 0% of what exactly?
Well, that's the percentage of female CEOs in Germany's 100 largest companies back in 2014. Let that sink in for a second. Not a single one. This one number is really the bombshell that kicks off our entire investigation today. So what on earth was going on?
All right, to really get our heads around this, let's dive into the hard data. The numbers don't lie.
So here we're looking at the top 200 companies in Germany. Back in 2006, women on executive boards, just 1.2%, barely there. Now you fast forward 8 years to 2014, and what do you get? 5.4%. I mean, sure, it's an increase, but over almost a decade, that's really slow progress.
And this bar chart just makes that slow crawl even clearer, doesn't it? Look at that tiny little sliver for 2006. And yeah, the 2014 bar is taller, but when you see it visually like this, you realize just how small that growth actually was over 8 years.
And this is super important because it shows the problem wasn't just about the CEO's seat. Look at this chart from 2012. As you move up the corporate ladder, from all employees on the left up through the management levels, see what happens to that orange bar for women? It just gets smaller and smaller. This is what people call the leaky pipeline. It's like the ladder just breaks for women the higher they try to climb.
So, okay, the numbers are crystal clear. There's a huge gap. But numbers just show us what is happening, not why. And that's the real question, right? Where exactly does that ladder break, and more importantly, why?
All right, let's play detective. We're going to start our investigation by looking at what the executives themselves said were the main reasons. And believe me, the study gives us some really big clues here.
Okay, this is fascinating. This is from a survey where they went straight to the source. They asked executives, hey, why are there so few women in leadership roles? And their answers? Well, this is where we start connecting the dots.
And look at this. The number one reason, by a long shot, a massive 73% of them pointed to the conflict between work and family life. It was seen as the single biggest hurdle for women who wanted to get to the top.
And this wasn't some vague idea. The study really broke it down. We're talking about societal pressure on women to be the main caregivers, which leads to an unfair split of work at home. On top of that, there wasn't enough good childcare available. And if you took a part-time job to manage it all, that was pretty much seen as kissing your career goodbye.
Okay, reason number two. Over half the executives, 54%, blamed the companies themselves. They said there was a huge lack of flexibility.
And what did that inflexibility look like? Well, a few things. You had these old-school, rigid work models basically designed by and for men who had someone else handling everything at home. The hiring process would penalize you for taking a career break, like for maternity leave. The study even found some companies thought of women as risky hires because, they might have kids. And to top it off, women were often pushed into departments like HR, which almost never led to the corner office.
So, we've got these really practical, tangible barriers. But here's the thing. That's not the whole story. Not even close. The study pushes us to go deeper, to look at what's happening underneath all of this.
And it comes down to this really powerful idea. The biggest walls aren't the ones you can see. They're the invisible ones, the cultural ones.
And this, of course, brings us to the famous glass ceiling, that metaphor for all the unseen things holding women back. Our source even talks about something tougher, the concrete ceiling, which, sounds a whole lot harder to break.
And this is what that ceiling is made of. Check out these stereotypical leadership traits from the study. For male managers, you get words like assertive, ambitious. For female managers, emotional, sensitive. So when the company's picture of a leader looks a lot like that first column, you've got a massive, often unconscious bias working against women. It's incredibly tough to fight.
The study even has this really powerful line. It says, male executives often act as the guardians of the glass ceiling. It's a striking way to put it, right? It means the people already in charge, who are mostly men, tend to pick successors who look and act just like them, keeping that invisible barrier firmly in place, maybe without even realizing it.
And this really brings us to the heart of the matter, the iceberg model. Everything we've talked about so far, that 0%, the work-family conflict, all of it, that's just the tip of the iceberg, the part you can see. But the real driver is the massive, invisible part under the water, the culture, the unspoken rules, beliefs, and biases that really run the show.
So we've been on quite a journey here, digging through the data. What's the big takeaway from all this?
Well, let's recap. We started with a pretty shocking problem, that 0% number. Then we followed the clues, the practical stuff like work-life balance and inflexible companies. But the big reveal, the real aha moment, is that all of those things are just symptoms. The root cause is much deeper. It's a culture full of stereotypes and biases that builds that invisible ceiling. And so, that leaves us with one last really important question. If all the practical fixes are just dealing with the symptoms, and the real problem is that giant invisible iceberg of culture, then what does it actually take to close the gap for good? How do you change that? That's the challenge this data from 2015 really puts on the table. And honestly, it's a question we're still grappling with today.